All right, Madam Chair, we are webcasting now on YouTube.
Terrific. Thank you, Randy. Well, welcome everybody. Let me say good morning. And again, thank you so much for being here at the special meeting of the Board of Governors. For those in the public and the media watching via YouTube, welcome to you as well and good morning. So to kick us off, let me ask Sharisa to do a roll call.
Thank you. Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right, great. Representative Briggs?
Aye, present.
Governor Dunlop? Thought I saw her. Nicole Dunlop? There you are. Thank you. Governor Feefold?
Here.
Governor Gindelsberger?
Here.
Governor Hauser?
Here, thanks.
Senator Martin? Designee
Here.
Terry Trink? Senator Martin, oh, there you are. Thank you. Governor Mazur?
Present.
Governor Moskowitz?
Here.
Governor Mueller?
Here.
Secretary Ortega? Designee Tanya Garcia?
Here.
Thank you. Representative Roy?
Here.
Senator Schwenk?
Here.
Chair Shapiro?
Here.
Governor Smith?
Here.
Governor Skinner?
Here.
Secretary Allison Jones?
Here.
Governor Washington?
Here.
Governor Weaver?
Here.
Governor Yeomans?
Here.
And Dr. Phillips. We have a quorum this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Sure.
Well, let's get right into our meeting. As we discussed at our quarterly board meeting a few weeks ago, or it was actually only last week, but we're holding today's special meeting of the board in order to vote on moving forward to the next stage on the Northeast and West integration plans. So it's important to note that today's action, if approved, would not be a final approval. This is not a vote on adopting the plans. This officially kicks off, this vote is needed to kick off a 60-day public review and comment period prior to the board considering the plans at our July meeting. So I hope that point is clear. You're welcome to ask questions about it, and Dan might elaborate on that as well. But public input is critically important to this process. And the vote today would help make these plans the best that they can be, getting that public input before the board votes on them in July. So as a member of this board, this is incredibly gratifying that we've reached this point. I'm reflecting back to 2016 when we first took this issue on, the issue of the structural issues with our universities and our great desire to make them the best place we possibly could for our students and for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And we initiated a top to bottom system review. And we made the choice to face the challenges that review unearthed head on. And that effort at that time in 2016 involved gathering input from hundreds of students, faculty, and staff across the 14 universities as we worked to identify the potential paths of transformation for our system. It was a daunting task, but it yielded critically important data that laid the groundwork for where we are today. So just reflecting back again, in order to get a timeline in here, with that in hand, we moved from system review to system redesign mode in late 2017, where we declared our three priorities were student success, university, leveraging the strengths of our universities, and excellence and transformation in governance and leadership. So with the arrival of Dan Greenstein as our chancellor, we kicked system redesign into high gear and leverage the insights and the intellect and the energy of so many from across our system so that we could explore ways to better serve our students and our communities and the Commonwealth. And what has emerged in the last 2 years is a vision for a sharing system, which we've talked about, one in which our institutions are collaborative and one in which we are more nimble and able to constantly evolve to meet the needs of our students. And to go for a system that was created for a time when it was appropriate in 1983 to the present time when we have to meet the needs of the 21st century, technology, our students, and workforce development in the Commonwealth. And again, the most important thing about this vision of a sharing system is that it expands opportunities for not only the students we have, but the ones whom we are not serving, and we very much need to serve. Our ability to reach out into populations of underserved groups of students throughout the Commonwealth. And that's really the key to fulfilling our statutory mission of providing high quality, affordable post-secondary education. So today's conversation about system integrations is the next step in our system redesign. This is a step that would preserve the most important aspects of our universities while creating more opportunities for more students and providing greater long-term financial stability for the integrating institutions. There are lots of questions that people have already raised, they'll raise today, and certainly if we have a vote of approval to move forward today during the public hearings, and that's just exactly what needs to happen. We have questions about accreditation, we have questions about NCAA, we have questions about curriculum, design, et cetera. So we welcome these questions, we want to discuss it. And I know Dan will address some of it, and some of it will be addressed as we move into the public hearing period if the board votes to approve today. Let me just end by saying I commend everyone who has had a hand in preparing these plans. And I mean more than 1,000 people across our system. Students, faculty, and staff have contributed their time and energy to these documents, and their efforts are just stupendous, and I can't say enough about it. And I'm going to add to that, trustees, members of this Board of Governors, legislators, people in the Department of Education. This has really been a massive effort of people coming together for the greater good. Not everyone will be pleased about everything. We know that. There's no such thing as perfect. But our goal is to get as close to that as possible in redesigning the system. So I look forward very much to our discussion today, and let me now kick off the public comment period. If there are any members of the public who wish to offer comments, Randy will call on you in the order received. And we ask that you state your name for the record, and please keep your remarks to the 2-minute limit so that we have time for others.
Great,
Dan?
and thank you, Madam Chair. According to our notice on the website, if you wanted to offer public comment, you would dial into the number. And I see we have 4 people dialed in, and we have 2 people already who have raised their hands to offer public comment. But I'll remind those others who dialed in, if you do want to offer public comment, press the *9 and I'll see that your hand is raised, and I will call on you in the order in which they've come in. So when I call on you, I'll unmute your line, and you'll hear the prompt to press *6 so that you can speak. Like Madam Chair said, just state your name and then offer your remarks. So we'll start with our first one. 1 second. And it's from area code 412. You should have a prompt to hit *6 so you can unmute yourself and speak. There you go.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Thank you so much. My name is Mary Jane Boe, and I am honored to serve as chair of Bloomsburg University Council of Trustees. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. As one of the 6 schools involved in the integration, we have serious financial concerns about the integration process as currently proposed. Bloomsburg University is the only stable school in the integration process. We are committed, like PASHE, to providing cost-efficient but outstanding educational opportunities for all Pennsylvanians. It has hurt us to see our sister schools suffer, and we have worked hard to embrace the integration process. But it would equally hurt us to see Bloomsburg deteriorate under the integration plan as currently designed. To date, Lock Haven has not met its system sustainability target by right-sizing its faculty to student ratio. Mansfield has not achieved a balanced budget. In addition, Lock Haven and Mansfield both have significant immediate deferred maintenance balances that remain unmet after capital fund allocations. Together, that unmet need comprises $65 million. This debt is not included in the financial sustainability analysis, but rather is referenced on page 30 as additional considerations. I urge you to review that page closely. It can only be ignored at the risk of continuing deteriorating and dysfunctional universities. In addition, the annual debt service of Mansfield of $6 million cannot be satisfied by revenues generated by Bloomsburg. That is not right, and it is not fair. On page 161 of the implementation plan, it states that debt service and physical plant are, quote, key constraints to sustainability, end quote. These must be addressed. In our view, we need a commitment from the Commonwealth of $100 million over 5 years for the integration to have a chance to succeed and grow without harming its willing partner, Bloomsburg University. I respectfully request that our letter sent yesterday to the Board of Governors that more fully details our concerns be made part of the record of this meeting. And again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now we'll go to our next speaker from area code 814. And you'll be prompted to press *6 to unmute yourself. Just give them a moment to come off of mute. Speaker from...
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear. Go ahead and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Kyle Schlecht, and I am a student at Lock Haven University. I'm speaking here today to advocate against the Northeast consolidation plans between Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Mansfield universities. Chancellor Greenstein has made claims that students support this merger. These claims are false, and I speak for the majority of my peers at Lock Haven by saying that we do not support this merger. Students at Lock Haven stand alongside the wonderful faculty whose jobs are on the line with this merger. Students also stand proudly alongside the Lock Haven City Council and Clinton County Commissioners. Both entities have voiced opposition to this merger. As students, it is very disheartening to see that our voices are not being heard. We do not support this consolidation, nor do we support the retrenchment of faculty and staff. Please take my words into consideration as these plans move forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have one more. Let's see. Any other speakers wish to speak? Give people one more chance. Okay, Madam Chair, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay. Thank you very much for those comments. We appreciate it. Now, let me ask Todd Spalding to offer remarks on behalf of SCUPA.
All right. Thank you, Chairwoman Shapira, Chancellor Greenstein, board members, presidents, and community at large. I'm here today on behalf of the State Colleges and Universities Professional Association, known as SCUPA. I'm going to keep my comments brief. As the president of SCUPA, I'm here to tell you that SCUPA membership is always willing to engage with stakeholders to improve the educational experience of our students. In our way, our students have often become members of our extended family. and without them, we would not be here following our career passions with them. Over the last year at the 6 universities designated for integration, we've had the opportunity to engage in a once-in-a-lifetime process for many of us in helping to design our universities for the future. To impact the way our institutions will become 2 newly formed entities. The SCUPA membership is both excited and concerned about our students, employees, and institutions. On behalf of SCUPA, I'm here neither to endorse or fight against the integration. SCUPA fully intends to continue engaging in the conversation with this process, learning more about the developed plans, continuing to help shape our futures, and to advocate for our students and SCUPA membership. There will be times we agree and times we disagree. We are here and will always be here to engage in the discussion. On another note, I'd like to thank all the SCUPA employees for their work over the last year and a half. Dealing with the impacts of COVID on our students has not been easy. All of us have pulled together with the rest of our campus community to keep our students engaged, learning, and advancing towards graduation. You have played a very important part in helping our students succeed in these trying times, and I thank you. We look forward to preparing for a new year and returning to our new normal. We'd also like to offer our sincere congratulations to all the upcoming graduates. You made it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your remarks. Now let me call on Dr. Jamie Martin to offer remarks on behalf of APSCUF.
Madam Chairwoman, I'm actually ceding my time to one of my colleagues today from Edinburgh. And so, Randy, I'm sure that you could introduce him for me. Thank you.
Yep, Sam, I think you're ready, right?
I am.
Great.
Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Sam Clastrom, a faculty member at Edinburgh University. Thank you, Chairwoman Shapiro, Chancellor Greenstein, governors, and guests. It's my absolute honor to represent APSCUF and about 5,000 of my faculty and coach colleagues across our 14 publicly funded state-owned universities. I grew up in Fairview Street in Lock Haven, and my family owned a few small businesses, which only thrived because of the university in our town. As an Edinburgh alum, I'm proud to also be a current faculty member and department chairperson. Over the past few months, I've led the curricular synthesis of my discipline for the Western integration, and I've served on 2 working groups. Through these roles, I've developed an intricate knowledge of the consolidation plan, and I'm here today to share some concerns that my colleagues and I have regarding its potential implementation. APSCUF's first concern about the plan to consolidate 6 of our institutions down to 2 is that while there's some brief information about community impact in the report, it's not as in-depth as we would hope for a project of this magnitude, such as the economic impact report that the state system issued in 2015. The plan, in fact, briefly mentions the general economic impact of our singular institutions, but lacks any depth regarding impacts of the proposed consolidated entities. To this end, in fact, the Perry report released this week, Perry is the Political Economy Research Institute at UMass Amherst, demonstrates that consolidation and the corresponding planned reductions as reflected in campus financial sustainability plans would have a devastating impact on our communities. The planned cuts at the Eastern Consolidated University totals 20% of its workforce, and the planned cuts at the Western Consolidated University totals 26% of its workforce by 2023. Beyond the unacceptable consequences for individuals who lose their jobs, the spillover effects will cascade through the regional economy, resulting in spikes in poverty rates. These local economies simply cannot sustain this level of damage, and I urge the board members to review this report and very, very seriously consider its implications. When Chancellor Greenstein visited Edinburgh last month, I voiced a concern regarding Bloomsburg and California being designated as branch campuses or other teaching locations as the plan describes because of the Middle States accreditation rules regarding multi-campus designations. And APSCUF understands the reasons stated for why Bloom and Cal were designated as main campuses. They've gone through the accreditation process more recently, giving us a little more runway for our first site visit, but that's honestly not our concern. What we need is a definitive answer from Middle States about the structural and legal consequences of this designation. In other words, Can these branch campuses be divested of and simply closed in time? I genuinely believe the chancellor when he says that the financial and human costs of closing one of these campuses would be insufferable for our communities. And if this is the concern, and if it is genuine, then getting this information should be a priority. I would hate for a board approval of these consolidations to have the devastating unintended consequences of closing a university and decimating a small town. This will put the board, honestly, in a very bad position. Moreover, our current chancellor may not intend to close campuses. And again, I believe him. But who's to say that a future chancellor will not? In a very similar vein, the plan states that athletic programs and events will remain available at all integrating campuses, which is then contradicted in the section titled Risk to Athletics, where the report is clear that the NCAA has not yet ruled on the proposed structure. Our athletes come to the Commonwealth from all over the country and even all over the world, and they often choose employment in Pennsylvania after graduation. They have the highest retention rates of all our student groups, and it would be irresponsible for the board to approve this consolidation before the NCAA gives its determination as to whether individual campuses are able to retain their own athletic programs. In fact, I would ask the board members to ask yourselves what your recommendation regarding consolidation will be if the NCAA does not permit independent athletic teams. What will you say to alumni, to donors, and how will we recruit for our institutions? To be honest, every day that passes with uncertainty surrounding consolidation increases the risk of potential damage to our individual brands and consequently to our enrollments. Some of our consolidating institutions are seeing a significant increase in unregistered students compared to this time last year. These are students who should be continuing their education with us next fall, and their potential departure signals an issue well beyond the impacts of the COVID pandemic. The rapid pace of the consolidation process has no doubt manifested a declining confidence in our 6 institutions, an unnecessary and unfounded decline in confidence. As faculty like myself who work day in and day out with our students know the truth, and this is the truth. Many of our institutions have financial challenges, yet they continue to do what they do best, provide pathways to upward mobility for working class Pennsylvanians, even as state investment remains some of the lowest levels in the nation. With regard to the proposed cost and projected savings of the consolidations, $29.6 million is the estimated investment cost, while the projected savings is just $18.4 million over 5 years. And all of this stemming from the contraction of the upper managerial organizational structure, an organizational structure which may or may not be adequate to serve 3 separate communities. The chancellor has said the consolidations are about opportunities, not savings. But if finances are a reason for increasing student to faculty ratios, which means decreasing faculty, how will this increase opportunities for students? ABSCUF members already saved the system $25 million in 2020-2021 due to the early retirement incentive. That number would actually mean something if it weren't for the auxiliary debt that has been the real financial burden to many of our institutions for some time. And yet the consolidation plan offers no solution for removing this albatross from our necks. Instead, the plan is quite clear that the Western integration will not result in financial savings precisely due to the auxiliary debt. In closing, I would like to thank the board, the Office of the Chancellor, and all our colleagues across the system for working on these consolidations. Not because I have confidence in the current plan, but because I know we all share a commitment to our students. Regardless of the outcome of the vote to consolidate, I believe there will be good things that come out of this process, even if it means that we need to change course and rethink system redesign. Admittedly, I've been inspired by our collective desire to create a healthier PASHE system. I am on board, but a lot of questions about this current plan remain unanswered. There are simply too many to address in this venue. I hope the right path is chosen for our students and for the future of our state system, once we've considered all the data, as well as better understand the potential consequences for our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your comments. Now let me turn to Jack Wobby to get an update from the PACT.
Good morning.
morning, board members and Chancellor Greenstein. Thank you for providing time for me to offer some insights as president of the Pennsylvania Association of Council of Trustees. In my role as PAC president, I have the honor of working with trustees from all our universities across the state system. These are dedicated and talented individuals who give so much of their time and talent to the universities and to our system. As trustees, we've been following the developments surrounding integration, and we understand that the work presented here today is important to trustees from both integrating universities and not integrating universities. We know that the success of the proposed university integration will benefit all our institutions and all our students all across the system. We share in common mission that extends beyond the walls of our own university. The historic mission is spelled out in law to provide higher quality and affordable education for Pennsylvanians. Because of how we are structured as a system, we know that it is in the best interest for all universities to be financially stable so that each is able to serve its students without being a financial burden on the others. The integration plans provide a thoughtful and data-driven approach to expanding opportunities for students while shortening up the financial health of our system. The integration plan, as stated, can keep us moving forward to the bright future of our universities for our students. And we also believe that what we've heard today, before any final action takes place, should also be considered. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wobby. We appreciate your comments. Now, let us take up consideration of the institutional integration plans for the Northeast and the West. The plans have been posted online since earlier this week, and board members have had the drafts of the plans to review since last week so that they can come prepared with any questions they may have. Let me first ask Dan and the team to make a presentation and then leave us plenty of time for discussion and questions. So Dan, you've been uncharacteristically quiet until this point, but I now turn the gavel to you.
You're on mute, Dan.
Yeah, 15 months in. Inevitably, thank you very much, Chairwoman. Inevitably, we have a deck. So Randy, we have a deck with some new attributes, which I'm excited to share. So, just a little bit of context, and Randy, if you could just jump into the slide. A lot of this information, we discussed at great length, and I won't talk at great length about it here. But I did want to start by reminding us, why a public state system is so important, because it is the engine for social mobility and economic development in this Commonwealth. It is arguably the last most reliable engine of social mobility and economic development. And we've talked at length, both here and in public testimony at the General Assembly, about the gap that we need to close between the jobs that today require 60% of the jobs today that require people with some higher education, and the fact that only 47% of our adult population have some education. And that closing that gap requires us not only to expand the number of students who are proceeding into and through post-secondary education, but increase the range of students to include those who have historically been underserved, rural students, students of color, low-income students, adult students. Next slide, please. And we've talked at great length about why our public system in Pennsylvania requires fundamental transformation as represented by system redesign. Quality and affordability is a historic part of our mission. It is the great benefit that public higher education offers to this nation. It ensures that those pathways to opportunity are available to everyone, irrespective of their zip code, of their race, of their background. But we are losing our affordability advantage. Pennsylvania is losing that available pathway to opportunity. We provide opportunities for everyone And yet we must evolve to meet our students where they are. Our students aren't who they were 20 and 30 years ago because the face of higher education in this country has changed dramatically in a good way as we have opened our doors, particularly in the public sector, to all comers. And naturally, in order to really even attack those fundamental changes that we need to make in order to stay relevant and productive and valuable to the state, we need to address financial challenges that we have been talking about for years. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. So why integration? Because integrated institutions can do more together than they can on their own. So begin at the bottom bar. The biggest challenge any of our universities face when they begin to lose enrollments, and many have lost enrollments in the 30s and 40s, and even 50%, is that in order to operate at their new enrollment levels, they need to begin to compress the number of programs and supports they offer their students. And this begets a kind of vicious cycle. As programs are compressed, enrollments continue to decline. It is a vicious cycle that is sadly increasingly well known across the face of higher education today in this country. And in a system, we have an opportunity to interrupt that cycle. We can ensure that all of our universities, by working together, we can ensure that all of our universities are able to offer an even broader breadth of programmatic opportunities to their students, independently of the number of students that they enroll. By working together, our universities can create opportunities so that we may continue to operate affordable, quality, career-relevant education across all regions of the state. Next slide. So what is integration? You've seen this slide. Brings together three institutions, combining them into a single powerhouse, single accreditation, president, leadership team, budget, reporting relationship, the chancellor to the board, staff, faculty, and academic program array, unified enrollment management strategy, three vibrant campuses, each with its own identity and athletic teams. Next slide. So throughout this presentation, we'll be sharing with you student journeys, three of them. These stories are conceptualizations of what integrations could mean for our students. And while they're not real students, the stories represent a kind of an assemblage of scenarios that I've heard over the past year from the countless students that I meet with in focus groups in various formats, who share their stories about their hopes and their dreams. The first student journey is about Keisha, who's a future freshman at Mansfield.
Keisha loves Mansfield, the beautiful campus, her classes, her friends on the soccer team. She loves the community she's built and has made lifelong friendships with her teammates. She always knew she wanted to do something in the health professions, something to help people. After going through her first semester at Mansfield, she decided to be a physician's assistant, even though Mansfield doesn't offer the program. But with integrations, Keisha could access the pre-physician's assistants program at Lock Haven with courses she takes in a classroom at Mansfield, synchronously with faculty and other students at Lock Haven. Because of integrations, Keisha will also have access to more hands-on learning and internship opportunities that help her serve the community while continuing her education.
Thank you. So obviously you've seen this slide too, how we're pursuing integration. We're following Act 50, which prescribes the process that we're engaged in. And as you can see, we've conducted a financial review of the financial impacts of potential integrations last summer, and then engaged in a planning process that has resulted in the reports that have been presented to the board for their consideration. As the chairwoman indicated, a vote today to approve the plans would only approve the plans for the purposes of kickstarting that 60-day public review and comment period. And then the board would come back and consider each of the plans again in its July meeting for their final disposition. And thereafter, obviously, if the board were to approve moving forward with integration would move forward with integrated entities accepting their first cohort of new students in the fall of 2022. Let me just riff a little bit on this slide. It's come up a number of times over the past several days, so I thought it would be appropriate to integrate it here. And it has to do with accreditation. So we showed this slide. We started meeting, obviously, with the accreditors with Middle States, I don't know, last summer. And we showed, Act 50 to Middle States, and we spoke with them openly about, their process for what is required. It's called the substantive change review, and our process as represented by the Act. They outlined the process that we need to follow. They won't consider a substantive change request. To put it, to cut to the chase, Middle States will not consider a public change request until the board approves a plan. It won't. That's not the way they are. And I remember this from Cheney days, and they're very collegial, I should say. Partners in Middle States are in some ways, this is certainly not their first rodeo. They have dealt with other institutions which need to come together for a variety of reasons, and they have any number of different pathways that they can consider, and their job is to help. They recognize the situation that we're in, and they're good partners. And similarly, the Department of Education, which is obviously important with respect to federal financial aid, largely will cue its considerations with respect of Middle States. So the process that we're on with them, involves a preliminary review, which the West and we have agreed that the West should go first, and then the Northeast. So we're in the middle of that preliminary review process. But the substantive change review, the substantive change request that would be kicked off, that would kick off the kind of determination by Middle States, cannot happen until would not even be begun until the board were to move, not just through April, but through July. So that is the nature of the process. It's the way that Middle States works. Again, they're fantastic partners. The fact that this is not their first rodeo means that they convey a sense of calm, even while we're obviously through the first time through this gate, having an awful lot of questions. So wanted to just throw that in. Next slide, Randy. So how has the process been engaged? We've seen this. It's been a very organic process, and we took a number of decisions very early on that we would do this in a very different way than has been done nationally. Most of these efforts are undertaken very, very closely held planning, which then results in an action, and institutions are brought together. We did this very organically. Recognizing that there are puts and takes in that approach, obviously. But we felt that given the culture and the history and the legacy and the uniqueness of all of our universities, that was really the only way. And that also that we respect and honor the expertise of our faculty and our staff, and felt very strongly that we would get a better plan by asking the people on the ground who actually do the work and know what they're doing to help develop it. So it's been a very organic process. It's been transparent insofar as it's been surrounded at every level, as shown in the picture there, by a variety of consultative structures. But I think even more so because we just took a decision early on to release information as it became available. And I've said this before. So when we had determined that we were going to pursue a path with Middle States, which allow our universities to sort of maintain their historic names and identities, et cetera, we shared that information. Similarly, when we determined that we would pursue a path with NCAA to allow our universities to continue their athletics teams, we shared that information. As soon as we had a construct of our academic program right, we shared that information. The upside, of course, is that people see what's available. As it's available, we get feedback dynamically. That's important. The downside is, nobody can see the entire elephant until the entire elephant is available. And of course, it's become available in the last, several days. But I think, if I had to choose again, I'd probably do the same thing, because that feedback has been important and has resulted in important strengthening and change to the thinking and to the report. And obviously, we've been very public. The reports are available to the world, as is now obvious to all of us, and it's very obvious to me because of my email traffic from people in the world. Are grateful for the presentation of our work, because I think there's a lot there to be learned by others, independently of what Pennsylvania will do. So I think there are multiple advantages to the public approach that we've taken. So Randy, next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about students at integrated universities, and really some of the key points that again kind of emerge from the reports. So really, it's trying to combine the best of both worlds in universities, many of which are really declining in their enrollments and facing those kinds of challenges I referenced earlier. That as we're able to combine the full advantages of a residential experiences, campus life, athletics, co-curricular activities, social life, et cetera, with access to a broader range of academic programs. We reckon that every student at any of the integrated universities will have access to about twice as many different program areas, degrees, majors, minors, areas of concentration than they would have if their institution was able to stand on its own as independent of an integrated entity. We focus very closely on students. I urge you to read of all the appendices. The report's only 30-ish pages, and there's like a lot of appendices. Obviously dip into the appendices as and where they move you, but I urge you to read the appendices on student success because they are grounded in what our students tell us about what they need. And folks in the student success working groups and subgroups have just gone out of their way tremendously to design universities for the future of our students, for the students of our future, rather than pouring today's students into constructs which we have developed over decades and thinking about what it means to make a college-ready student. They've designed our universities, our integrated university, around our students and thought about what it means to make a student-ready university. So it's exciting. Lower cost degree pathways, support for underserved students, the West's fully online undergraduate degree and degree completion programs, aspirations in the Northeast to develop short course certificates, non-degree credentials for adults looking to reskill and upskill. And obviously a focus on success. Until we stop the financial decline of our system and these universities, we simply cannot affect the kinds of transformational changes that are envisaged for system redesign. So next slide. I think we have an opportunity to visit with Stephanie. Next student journey. Stephanie won't see many changes to her academic experience with integration, but she will benefit in other ways.
Stephanie has always loved understanding how things work. That's why she's a student in CalU's Mechatronics Engineering Technology program. It's an exciting field that will give her a promising career path. But Stephanie is also dealing with anxiety and stress, something she and her friends talk about. She's thankful for the on-campus supports at the university and grateful she has a supportive community around her. And while integrations won't really change her classes and on-campus interactions, Stephanie will have access to enhanced student support services offered through more flexible modalities. She'll also benefit from a wider support network that will help keep her on track to graduation, and that provides real peace of mind.
Thanks, Randy. So let's move on then to just, so why now? Next slide, please. And maybe the next slide. Well, again, I mean, obviously we have to be mindful of our context. We have to really begin to address the financial circumstances in which we find ourselves. And here, reproduced from the report, are two financial projections with and without integration. And that's for the Northeast, and let's go to the West. The West, obviously, a weaker starting position results in weaker performance, takes beyond the initial projection period to grow out of the net loss situation that they're in. But I don't think I need to comment at any greater length about the divergent trajectories of those two lines. But there's another, I think there's another, and in some ways more profound reason to pursue transformation now. Because transformation is what you told me the system needed to do, and to do as a matter of urgency. And I mean you, the board, the governor, everyone I interviewed with in spring of 2018 when I was considering the role and being considered for the role, and I think I must have interviewed with 100 people on that day from every single constituency. We cannot, we must not remain the same. We cannot continue doing the same things expecting different results. That was the instruction that was conveyed to me by you. And pursuing that memory, and in preparation for this meeting, I took a little trip down memory lane, reviewing, the notes I kept and the blogs and the trip reports I made from my initial few months here, from my initial conversations with elected representatives, the General Assembly, with faculty, staff, and students and trustees and community members during my first, my 5 campus tours. And in that first year, I got the same directive from every constituency I spoke with, virtually every person. I heard the same thing, the same palpable yearning for change, not just for modest tweaks, but for fundamental change. A desire to climb out of trenches well and truly dug, to work together in the interests of our students, our communities, our university, our Commonwealth. I even found the Ready, Willing, and Able survey that we did in spring 2019 during that campus tour to take the temperature of the community with respect to changes then being framed around system redesign, the sharing system. So a couple of top line results, and they're available on the web, and a blog post that Randy, we can find and circulate. 900 survey responses, 90% said our universities face significant competitive challenges. 90% said we needed to improve our performance to achieve our future percent. 80% said people in my area recognize changes needed. And then this last one, stunningly, but not surprisingly, even the deep commitment and the passion and the mission orientation of our employees. 92% said, I am willing to accept changes to my role if it helps improve our performance. And is any of that endorsement of integration? Of course not. But it is part of our fabric, our culture, our psyche, our aspiration, our awareness of who and where we are. An aspect that we cannot and we must not overlook or forget. We know we need to change significantly. To change significantly in order that we may continue to serve our historic mission. That sentiment, that urgency is reflected in the work conducted by 1,000 people on these integration plans. In honor of them, colleagues, mission-focused folks who undertook this massive planning effort while doing their day jobs in the course of a pandemic, in honor of them, I urge you, members of the board, to approve the plans for the purposes of launching a public review and comment period. Last thoughts. Change is super hard, painfully hard. And last time we met, I spoke about its impact showing up in all sorts of different ways, often in the same body, inspiring a sense of opportunity and growth, provoking healthy skepticism and criticality, and provoking fear and anger and loss and grief. And each of these responses is real, and each is human, and each requires our compassion and support. And should the board launch the 60-day public comment period, I anticipate that each of these responses will come rushing forth and collide in a highly public fashion, with the third being the loudest, best organized, and most dramatic. That is the way of these things. My fellow Alexis de Tocqueville fans will recognize it as a uniquely American trait, which de Tocqueville commented on when he visited our country in 1835. It is a price we pay, a small one in my mind, to ensure open, inclusive, transparent, consultative processes. It is part of our American democracy. So if the board moves forward, I urge 3 things of colleagues around the system. 1, read the plans. Honor your 1,000 colleagues. Yes, you may find parts of them to be a little dull, but our community is an educational community that is grounded in empirical practice, seeking to engage students in critical thinking, analysis, and vigorous yet respectful debate. Understand that these documents don't hold the answer to every question about our journey, but they provide a solid roadmap to our destination. And I encourage you to comment and react to what is in the plans. And yes, rather than what is not in And yes, I appreciate that is a prominent feature of our nation's political discourse, one that has fueled uniquely American phenomena where facts no longer matter because each is entitled to construct their own. And for those of you who have room on your summer reading list, I highly encourage you to look at Kurt Anderson's Fantasyland. But ours are institutions of higher learning. Our mission includes defending and advancing the cause and the practice of reason and of science in pursuit of something elusive but vital to the well-being of our nation, which is truth. 2, be good to each other. We're part of a family. And as in any family, members will have different views about different topics. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. Diversity of perspective enriches dialogue, breeds deeper understanding of issues and of people, and in an educational setting, it models for our students the kind of skills and abilities we want them to take forward into the world after they leave us. But it will only accomplish these objectives if family members engage one another with compassion and humility, even in the most heated and consequential of debates, if they allow one another to speak up if they wish to, and to feel safe in doing so. How we proceed will demonstrate very publicly, because should the board approve these plans for the purposes of public comment, all eyes in higher education will at that stage be on Pennsylvania. It will show to our communities, our students, their families, our competitors, our peers, how we are a community devoted to higher learning, able to practice what we teach, and to work within our values and integrity. Our interactions with one another will reflect our respect for one another and for safeguarding civil and reasoned discourse, for lessons we learned as children, for lessons we teach our children, for traits that we expect of ourselves, our neighbors, and of one another. So finally then, in this regard, I would ask us to be mindful, should we go forward, as we engage in this dialogue about what happens after this process is complete. Whatever its outcome, we will, because we must, come together, lock arms, move forward as members of our university communities, our family, our system. The future of public higher education in this Commonwealth, the future of our universities, the future of our system relies upon our doing it. Our students deserve nothing less than that single-minded commitment and in respect to their future. Thank you, Madam Chair. I return the gavel.
Thank you, Dan. That was inspirational. That reminded us truly not only of what we're here to do and our higher purpose, but that we have the opportunity to be role models in so many ways. And I very much appreciate it, and I'm sure others do as well. I think that really puts us in a frame of mind to move forward on the discussions here today. Let me say now that we're going to open the floor to board member questions and discussions before we put the motion on the floor. So Randy, do you want to instruct people again about raised hands? And
Sure. Board members, you should see the raise hand feature in your Zoom. And if you don't see the Zoom raise hand, you can also just shoot me a chat and say, I want to pipe up and ask a question or chat or make a comment. And first we had Senator Martin.
Thank you very much. Thank you all, and thank you, Dan, for the presentation and all the work that has gone into this. Just a couple questions as we look at kicking this off officially and towards meeting the system's goals. The first would be, before integration was proposed, the Chancellor's Office developed a sustainability plan with metrics that each university was supposed to attain. My question is now, how does that sustainability plan fit into the integration process? If you could talk a little bit.
So that's a great question. And, it's just something that I think we need to continue to speak very consistently about, because I know it's a point of confusion. And it's maybe confusion. So sustainability and integration are different, right? Sustainability is required of all of our universities according to the board's policy that was passed in October 2019. 9 of our universities had financial health indicators which suggested they needed to have a plan to determine their sustainability, and they are in the course of executing those plans. And it's an important distinction, Senator, because it actually gets to the community impact issue. The community impacts are community impacts of integration. Integration assumes that our universities have already met their sustainability goals. Independently of whether the board determines to move forward with integration, our universities will still be required to meet their sustainability goals. And the greatest challenge that some of our universities face is that in meeting those sustainability goals, absent which they tug profoundly on the financial health of all of the universities in the system. In meeting those sustainability goals, the challenge is that those universities become so compressed in terms of their program offerings that they exacerbate the cycle of enrollment decline, which is the purpose of integration, to begin to break that cycle.
Well, that leads to, and you bring that kind of transition into my second of 3 questions. As we move towards this, obviously we're not only looking to meet the needs or meet the mission of the system, but it's also going to take increasing enrollments. And I think we've had a lot of discussion over the course of this time as well, that's critically important. It's a very competitive world out there in terms of competing for students. So integration is moving that direction, but also parallel, we have to find ways to get more students into our institutions. That would be my second of my 3 questions is, how does that parallel these efforts in order to reach long-term sustainability?
Right. So and I can turn to colleagues, presidents to address this issue with me, but the Northeast plan projects a 1% enrollment growth. The West projects a 2% enrollment growth, different largely because of the online undergraduate degree and degree completion programming it's looking at. Those estimates are conservative by comparison to estimates that were provided in sustainability plans, and we intentionally took a very conservative route. But I think the bigger issue is that universities working together just offer, and as per the plans and per the presentation, offer a much wider degree of opportunities for our students, not just academically, but in terms of the supports that are available, which we believe will be a competitive advantage that they would not have acting independently of each other. But President Pearson or President Hanna, or we have a bunch of presidents, Patterson or Thorne, if you want to chime in, don't hesitate.
Senator, that's a great question. And as the Chancellor suggested, we revised the enrollment projections for the Northeast based on the information we have available to us now. We actually revised them down. A big chunk of the 1% increase in enrollment comes from new programs that we plan to launch as part of the integration process once we're integrated, and also improved retention. We have to do a better job at retaining students that come to the integrated entity. We lose about 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 3 students, depending on the campus you look at. And we can do better than that by providing the services our students need. And if you look at the program document, there's a $500,000 investment in creating student success centers at all 3 campuses in the Northeast integrated entity, which really focuses squarely on identifying the services our students need and making sure that those services are delivered so that students come, are retained, and stay to graduation.
In the Western project, we are also looking at strengthening our traditional undergraduate programs, which are bricks and mortar on the 3 campuses, by bolstering, as Bashar has just mentioned, our student success and student supports. But we also reanalyze things from we want to be very realistic about what we're able to gain each year. And that's why we went in and did a dive and a deeper analysis. For the degree completion and the online endeavor, the 3 campuses in the West already have a very strong presence with regard to online, and we've been doing that for decades. Together, we feel like we can really leverage our resources and get the word out from a marketing perspective to the non-traditional students, or the students who are of traditional age, but taking a non-traditional course forward.
Charles, you wanted to add to that?
I did, and to add on to what Dr. Hannah was describing, the 1% also does not take into consideration the addition of certificate and non-degree programs, workforce aligned programs that will be part of the portfolio of the Northeastern integration.
And I just wanted to emphasize, sorry, Charles, go ahead. I just wanted to underscore that point, Senator, that you know, this is a feature of higher education. The number of people who are interested in the kind of traditional residentially based education that we're so good at, it's just declining. It's a national phenomenon. It doesn't make us bad or them bad. It's just that's the trend line that we're seeing. And that becomes even more competitive more challenging after 2026. And so, as many institutions are doing, we're looking at diversifying our portfolio of student segments that we can serve. Our universities have been quite successful, in my view, many of them, if not all of them, in moving into the postgraduate, master's degree programming space, in part out of recognition that traditional population is declining and will continue to decline further. These institutions now take a further step in serving new segments of students who really need our help. 51,000 students every year, according to NC SARA data, leave Pennsylvania to take an online program because there are not available programs in the state, right? And the adult population, we hear this from employers and employer associations through our Prepared for PA work all the time. We're looking for opportunities for reskilling and upskilling, which are simply not as widely available as they need to be, especially affecting industries where demand for skilled workers outstrips supply. So these are opportunities for us to sort of address a structural trend by broadening our portfolio and serving students who need our help but are currently underserved by us at the moment.
Thank you. And my final question, and we talked about this before. I asked this more from a perspective, as you know, I wear numerous hats here in terms of being on the Board of Governors from a system perspective. I represent a district that has Millersville University in it. Then I also serve as chair of education and on appropriations. And currently, we have 4 of the institutions that are not meeting the sustainability goals that are partaking of this. One that's going to be coming back potentially for a loan from the system and its impact on the system reserves, et cetera. And I've always talked about the fact that, the system in place, when we talk about systemness, we have the ability when people are having some down years, where right now we're able to shift some money. But over the course of a long-term period of time, that the uneven distribution of funds, I'll just say per enrollee to each of these institutions, could actually have an impact on other institutions that aren't part of this integration. Maybe we're on the edge of the sustainability. When I think of some of the other institutions out there, that the longer that they're engaged in the cross-subsidization on the negative side of it, where money is not coming to them but going to other institutions, could actually pull some of those at-risk institutions or ones that are holding their head above water to the point of where we're at right now. So I guess my question is as we look at the implementation of these integrations, at what point or how quickly can we get back to the time where it's more about, oh, you're having a down year, okay, we'll help you this year, not over a long-term period of trend where it's actually pulling some of the other institutions, invaluable resources with it, and put them in the position where we're going to have to talk about what are we going to do about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it does. So a couple of, and I'll invite other presidents from, let me open up, invite other presidents from non-integrating universities may wish to speak to this point as well. So the first thing is that the integration plans assume that the allocation formula, how we allocate state appropriated dollars, continues into the projection period. That any significant change to the allocation formula really gets into that, conversation we've been having, that, this transformation is not just about our doing really hard work inside the system. It's about changing the nature of the partnership with the Commonwealth. And to affect that allocation formula is going to require just additional level of investment by the Commonwealth into the system. And there are a variety of ways to do that. We can discuss that. Alternatively, we could, put the burden onto our students, but we all know the cost of increasing tuition, having already exhausted a great deal of our affordability advantage. So I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that, and I'll summarize what I believe other presidents think, but then ask them perhaps to chime in. The biggest risk that is that a university in the system, which is in a subsidizing role, the biggest risk that university faces is the continued financial decline of those being subsidized. I would say the driving motivation of the ability of our presidents and our leadership teams to work very closely together on system redesign is that pervasive understanding that individually our futures are tied to the success of each other, that we are learning to vest in each other's success because we know we need to. So I guess that's the second point. The third point I wanted to raise is really just about the sustainability plans. So the sustainability plans are sort of executed over a 3-year period. And universities have until June 2022 to achieve their sustainability goals. And some universities chose to backload the work, if that makes sense, to sort of push the work into the out years. And that's not, there was no, the sustainability plan is universities need to achieve a certain set of goals. How those goals are achieved are left to the presidents and their leadership teams to determine in the normal way. And they just did things differently. That's that's kind of a part of the fabric of who we are. When the presidents reviewed progress against sustainability plans, and we did that in February, there are concern about 4 institutions. But again, we're operating within a 3-year window that takes us to June 2022. So, I think we have responses to those concerns, and we'll be recommending them to the board. There may be some actions tied to them, but that period of time is not yet over, and leadership at universities is operating within the policy, so long as they work within that period. I don't know if other presidents wanted to comment on any of those points. More than welcome to.
President Barry.
Sure. Thanks for the opportunity. First, I need to point out that the phrase funding formula is a misnomer. The Board of Governors actually abandoned its funding formula in July of 2018 and created an off-the-cuff allocation. And that allocation has essentially stayed the same since then. And I'll speak for Slippery Rock. On July of 2018, my first meeting of the Board of Governors, our allocation was substantially reduced. At the time, pre-COVID, it was an inconvenience and we could figure it out. Times are changing, enrollments are more of a struggle. And now what was once an inconvenience is a fundamental problem, and it is damaging to Slippery Rock. And if you look at the appendix, at the chart that lays that out, you'll also see that Slippery Rock and Westchester, who also was actually damaged more than Slippery Rock in that day, we have some of the best efficiency measures there in terms of student faculty ratio, in terms of size of our classes. So it's not as if we have a whole lot that we can cut in order to make it, because we're already there in terms of efficiency. Now it's just you're taking from muscle now, not fat, and that's a fundamental problem, and it's one I persever on, but I don't apologize for it, because it's my job to make sure that Slippery Rock's voice is heard in all this as well.
President Fiorentino.
Well, I certainly can echo that. You know, we're not miracle workers. The institutions that are stronger have been relied on quite a bit for funding, and certainly Westchester the most. But we're now looking at great reasons for stabilizing tuition, but we're sitting here having meetings talking about what are we going to have to cut. Which of the great services we're providing to our students are we going to have to cut because we simply don't have the money to do it. We're rooting for everybody to be successful here because, as Dan said, a stable system with all the schools being strong and operating autonomously is the best thing that can happen for Westchester and for the other schools that are doing the subsidizing right now. But we can't do this for much longer. It's going to start dragging us all down, to Senator Martin's point, all down into the area where we're facing the same challenges.
And the next question comes from Senator Schwenk.
Thank you, Randy, and good morning, everybody. So, big picture questions where I'd like to focus right now. How will we know that we are succeeding or making progress, maybe is the better word? And two, can we course correct? Will we be able to, during this period, this is the time when we really have to hear what, some of those voices that are questioning the plans that have been made. How will we accommodate those changes as we go forward and communicate that?
Sorry, on the evaluation, there is an evaluation framework in the plan, and it's basically, are we making progress in the way that our projections suggest we ought to be, both with and against the usual indicators that are included in those projections, enrollments, the financial indicators, student outcomes, or their target student outcomes goals that are referenced, et cetera. So basically, and all of those are within the board approved metrics and the accountability framework that we have already set up for all of our institutions. So we have the mechanics necessary to continue to track our progress and to get really good leading indicators about whether we're likely to be successful. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is, at least my anticipation, and we certainly designed the process and we presented a little bit of that in February. It is continuous learning, constant. I would anticipate constant course correction, but that is what all of our universities do. They're constantly course correcting as circumstances change, as enrollments change up and down, as state funding changes, as decisions about tuition change. Course correction is part of what we do anyway, and it will certainly be very much a part of what we would do should we go forward and implement integrated universities. I don't know whether you were asking the senator, but if you were asking also whether there's an opportunity to adjust the plan in response to comments,
That's what I meant.
Okay, the answer is absolutely yes. And at least our expectation, and there'll be plenty of opportunity to discuss this, one way of approaching that would be in July, come back in July if we go forward, with a kind of, with a kind of change, what do they call it when you're building your kitchen? The change order. Here's so we could summarize what changes have been made to maybe save people's eyes on the document.
How will we communicate that, Dan? I think one thing that's really important about this, certainly as we hear from different stakeholders on this, I was never asked is, in quotes, might be something that you hear from people. And so now there is the opportunity for people to respond. But I want to be sure that those folks know that they were heard and that other people like my caucus that I represent on this board understand exactly how we're making the changes and where we're going finally on this process.
Yeah, no, I quite agree. And I think that will, we'll need to reflect that. At least this is my initial, I mean, I'm kind of making it up in response to the question, but at least our thinking was that we would reflect those changes in the next presentation to the board.
I hope to hear more about, formally how we will be going forward. I think that's critical to making sure that, and our stakeholders are everybody in the Commonwealth, right? We own the system. And the other question I would ask, and you touched on this a bit, Dan, is middle states and the athletic organizations.
Yeah.
Can you update us on what they're saying, and let us know when we'll hear definitively as to how they perceive the integration plans?
Sure. So middle states, we're expecting to hear. So the West has submitted a preliminary report. We're expecting to hear back anytime. I mean, middle states works on its own. But its response to the preliminary report is neither a yay or nay, right? The critical part of their process is that we would submit, and I may turn to Donna to correct me where I mangle this, but we will need to submit for each integrating entity of what's called a substantive change request. That is what the commission will then review through its own process.
And their response will mean what in terms of integration?
So middle states is, and again, I'm not an accreditor. I've never played one on TV, and there are other people who have been on accreditation committees who are on this Zoom call.
I have been.
You have been. Okay, so you can speak to this. Middle states doesn't say yes or no. They say, here are the X number of standards. Here is where you are. I mean, I don't know if President Walton is here, but we could sing you songs and tell you stories about our experiences with Cheney. They will simply evaluate the institution against the standards that they have, and then they will report on where the institution is meeting and not meeting standards, and where it's not meeting standards, they will make recommendations, and the recommendations, have a degree of so it's a I'm framing it. It's a dialogue. It is a constant back and forth with middle state. It's not middle state is not in a position to say don't integrate, and neither is NCAA.
No, I understand that. I just want to hear that we're not at risk at losing accreditation for these institutions, or at risk of losing athletic teams or opportunities for the students on those various, different universities.
No, you are correct. I mean, Donna, I don't know if you're on the call, or Dale, I know you're leading our work with middle states. Did you want to chime in? And
if Donna's here, I'll defer to her. If she's not, I'll go ahead and answer.
Yes, I'm here.
Thanks.
Let me do this so I can, here we go. The action that the Middle States commissioners would take on the basis of the request, the complex substantive change request, and then the review by peer evaluators, is to basically reaffirm the accreditation of the transaction. So they would approve the transaction in terms of the continuing accreditation of the entity. So the consolidation does not give up accreditation. It does not seek a pathway for an entirely new accreditation. It is a pathway to retain accreditation. And that is what the commissioner's action to approve would do. It would retain and reaffirm the accreditation. Dan,
thank you. That's what I wanted to understand.
And Donna, can you just hum one more? But when would we be? At what time would we be submitting, according to middle states? At what time would we be expecting to submit a change request, a substantive change request?
Right. We plan to submit the substantive change request in September. We cannot submit it, as you have already noted, until after the board acts to approve the transaction, and are hopeful, based on middle states' suggested timeline, that the commission would review that the request and the report of the review committee at their March commission meeting, and would approve it for a July effective date.
Thank you.
That's March of 2022.
Thank you, Senator. We're going next to David Mazer and then Representative Roy. David.
Thank you, Randy.
Chancellor, obviously I appreciate the presentation. We're covering a lot of ground here. Having been on this board for 8 years, having watched enrollments decline, having watched funding decline and then increase, and seeing where we are, we did not take system redesign lightly. I don't think that there is a perfect solution, but I do think that we have done the best we can do to come up with the best solution. It will evolve over time. This is a marker, it is a milestone, this is not a destination. And while we don't have all the answers, we have as many answers as we can have on April 28th, 2021. We will have more answers tomorrow. We will have more answers in a month. Unfortunately, we are not in a position where we can let the perfect get in the way of the good. And while perfect is wonderful when you're doing math and science, there's no way to do perfect when you're doing system redesign. If you were to wait until it was perfect, it wouldn't be perfect then because the world would have changed while you were doing it. And so, it's a circular problem. I am comfortable with where we are. I am grateful to the hundreds, if not thousands, of participants who have helped us build this plan and have invested their time, energy, and heart into it. And I am confident that we will take all the feedback that we get and do our best to make it the best plan that we can make it, knowing though that we must continue to move forward. So I've heard a lot of wonderful things. We'll continue to hear a lot of wonderful things, but I kind of wanted to put a marker down and frame it. This is not an endpoint. It is no longer the beginning, but it is not the end. It is not the middle. It is just a point. And I'm very comfortable with where we are, and I am super excited to see where we're going next. So thank you all for your time.
Representative Roy and then Sam Smith.
Good morning, everyone. This is quite a packet to look at. Anybody from the public that doesn't realize it, you can go to the PASHE website, look at the agenda. You can see the packet. I have spent hours and hours looking at the packet, and as well as other information over the last several months. But there is a lot of good information in there. But just one thing that I wanted to mention, it was brought up during the public comment period. I can't remember who. Somebody floated the idea, what if a future chancellor or the board wanted to close a university? Well, I believe that would actually take a change in the state law, not a PASHE board policy. The 20-member PASHE board cannot close a university. Now, the House and the Senate and the governor, we could pass a state law and close the university, but it's my understanding the board cannot close a university. Can somebody verify that, Dan or somebody?
Yeah, no, you're correct. The board is specifically prohibited from closing a university, so it means a future chancellor couldn't. But there's two reasons, Representative Roy, and they're both in the report. So one of them is that, but the other is that the financial impacts, we put some numbers in are just dreadful. I mean, and those financial impacts would be borne by the other universities in the system. So the quickest way to drag everybody else down would be to close the university, unless the state were to come in and underwrite the cost, basically. So it is both a practical and a statutory impossibility.
And then also that this part's obvious, but just from a standpoint of fairness and opportunity, I think all the board members, we want the PASHE universities to be available in every part of the state so that no matter where you live in Pennsylvania, you have access to the system. So, it's just, I don't ever, no matter who's on the board, I don't ever anticipate any future board or future chancellor or future legislature would ever advocate to close any of the universities. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Sam Smith and then Nicole Dunlop. Sam?
Thank you. I have a couple comments and questions, and Dan, you can kind of pick and choose if you want to answer or if you want to just let it be as a comment. When I listened to the presentation today, I tried to kind of put things into perspective, and it seemed to me in a very oversimplified way that the sustainability plans, getting all the schools, squared away on their sustainability plans over the couple year period that they were given, is like an overall key to the future success. And then you throw on top of that the integration plans, where it seems to me that the linchpin of success of integration really is going to boil down to enrollment. And I think Bashar talked a little bit about retention and new programs, which to me strike me as very integral to successful integrations of these 6 schools. So that's just kind of an overview as I see it. If someone doesn't think I'm seeing something correctly, please don't be afraid to tell me. Middle states, I've not had any interaction with them regard to this, but have a little bit with some other issues. Middle states strikes me as a pretty politically sensitive organization. Dan talked a little earlier about that they don't really say yes or no. They say this is what you need to do to achieve goals or to achieve the standards and all. I'm not very much concerned. Dan, if you choose to respond to this, feel free. But I think they're going to help us go where the Board of Governors wants to go, and that they'll figure a way out to make it work. So I don't really view that as a major hurdle. The NCAA side of that, which is sort of parallels the middle states world in a sense. On that one, Dan, I would ask a more direct question. Can you be a little more specific as to where we actually stand? I understood what you said about middle states, but where do we actually stand at this moment in terms of dealing with NCAA? And I'm going to go with the assumption, and you can correct me, that they are similar to middle states. They're pretty politically sensitive and going to be, kind of keen to, to what's going on with this meeting even.
Yeah, I mean, they're exactly to the point. I mean, look, a couple of points. So they're all exactly as you've described. Frankly, they're all watching middle states because, think of middle states as the big ship in the middle of the Suez Canal. And other ships which are trying to get through the Suez Canal need middle states. So that's actually, I'm riffing on this, and if colleagues from middle states,
that ship is sideways.
No, it's definitely sailing. It's on its way. But it takes up space. I think so. That's the first thing. The second thing is, look, these organizations, including the Department of Education, they are not here to wreck higher education. They are here to help, and they know. And this is definitely true of middle states and Department of Ed. Institutions across this country in higher ed, they're struggling. We are not the only rural schools who are suffering from enrollment decline and serious financial challenges. And middle states and the Department of Education and NCAA all recognize that, and they want to help because that's what they do, right? And you think about it, so I'm going to go to NCAA because you asked. So we put a proposal in front of NCAA, and I'm going to turn to Bashar for the details on the timelines and whatnot. And we're going back and forth with them just as we're going back and forth with middle states and with Ed, because they have all sorts of really good questions, as you do, that need to be asked. Like, can you tell us about the structure and what does accreditation look like, and how does financial aid work, and how do budgets, they want to know what it is we're proposing so that they can then respond to it. And they're all good questions. So we got recently a bunch of questions back from NCAA, and we'll in the process of responding to them. I'm confident that we will work look, athletics are really important to rural schools. NCAA gets that. They have a lot of rural schools who are in this situation, right? We all have a motivation to solve this problem. We will find a way to maintaining teams at all of our universities. We are there, but it is, as with middle states, there are unknowns that are simply not going to be available to us today. And with respect to middle states and possibly NCAA, not in July. But they wouldn't change my recommendation to this board unless any one of those organizations can, first of all, they don't have as we've decided, they don't have a deciding vote. Their decision is not critical to the determination of whether we move forward. Bashar, did you want to add a little more detail on the middle states?
And you mean NCAA, Dan, right?
I meant, yeah, NCAA. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I think the chancellor summarized it well. I mean, they're asking the same questions that you have. As the chancellor said, accreditation, Federal Department of Education, and structure. We were on a call with them this past week, and they asked those questions, and we will be preparing responses to those questions and submitting them to the NCAA in the next couple of weeks. It's an iterative process going back and forth with them. They have agreed to even hold a special meeting to continue considering our proposal before their next scheduled meeting. So as the chancellor said, it's an ongoing process with NCAA like it is with middle states.
Thank you. Just one more question, comment. You had mentioned it earlier in a response to Senator Martin, and it's something I think that all of us, from all the schools have concerns with, and that's the going back to the community impact issue. It seems to me that I could put a community impact answer out there that could be on any end of a spectrum. The worst would be if these schools continue to decline in terms of enrollment and economic vitality, sustainability. Can you give me a little more feeling of how we what impact is this? Let's put the question as it's currently framed to the public. If we pass this, what's the impact going to be to these communities if we go through with the integration?
Right. So again, go back to the earlier question, right? I mean, the earlier conversation. So sustainability plans will be implemented independently of whether we go forward. So the significant reduction in force, where there is significant reduction in force, that happens anyway. We are doing everything we can to minimize those impacts. We work with ABSCUF. I think we started this year with 113 retrenchment letters, more or less. We're down to mid 40s, and we continue to work at it. We've had a retirement incentive. Retirements occurred across the system. Honor those people who took advantage of that opportunity and their service to the state. Obviously, not just faculty but staff. With faculty, obviously, retirements relieve pressure on in certain circumstances on the need to do furloughs and retrenchment. With faculty, we're also able to do everything we can to ensure that faculty who are at risk at one university can find a role at another. So we're actively engaged in that process now, and that number continues to dwindle. With AFSCME, we work at the university level where institutions are thinking about outsourcing facilities management or whatever. Again, both of these processes are governed by our contracts. They're good contracts. They require us to work together to do these things, which is a good thing. With AFSCME, we've been successful at Edinburgh in not, and at Bloom in not having to pursue various outsourcing plans, because we work closely with AFSCME to come up with a way that we could move forward together with them. So we do everything we can to mitigate those impacts. The impacts specifically then of integration, and it's evident in the plans, are on the non-represented staff, particularly in management roles. This has already been mentioned. They make up 11% of our payroll. So they represent a very, modest potential impact on the community. And we have been and continue to work with our non-represented staff in the way that we're working with our faculty and represented staff for the same reason, because we care and we honor their service, and our employees are our most precious resource. So we will do everything we can to mitigate the need for furlough and layoff in the non-represented group, including use of in retirement incentive, including by trying to place people in roles that may be available at other universities. So given all that, the impacts of integration are negligible. in terms of jobs created. The greater impact, obviously, to your point, is if we do nothing and we continue to see decline. And the decline in the number of students has a direct impact, not just in terms of enrollment, number of students in a community. There are also impacts where universities, and there are a number of examples, are challenged to continue with students sort of first to second year retention. Students in their first year largely live on campus. Their needs are met on campus. They spend on campus. They begin to venture in and contribute to the local economy as they grow through their academic program. And where we're losing students, at the rate of 30 and 40% by the second year, those impacts are as profound as just the enrollment ones. So these are all issues that integration is expected to address. Which is why, frankly, the impact study, it's light because the impacts according to the financial projections are projections of growth, not decline.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Nicole and then Representative Briggs.
Thank you, Randy. Good morning, everyone. My question is just, how is this going to look to future students? Are they going to see it as a positive or negative thing? And how are we going to educate future students on this? And are we including this like possible uncertainty in our enrollment projections?
Nicole, the last, are we including the possible, and then that word got garbled in our enrollment projections?
Oh yeah, so are we like including like possible uncertainty in future students like in our enrollment projections?
Can I turn to President Hannah and Pearson? Before I do, I think students no community feels this is not a subject which elicits a uniform response. So our students are very different, just our faculty are very different, our staff are very different, right? People are very different in the way they respond to the concerns that I am aware of from students have to do with how the associations are going to run, how student fee money is distributed. Are my classes going to, am I going to be required to do all my classes online? Do I have to drive between institutions? Issues that we're able to address. There are, again, this is drawing on, it's not a sample of one, it's a sample of about 150. In my experiences, people are excited about the possible opportunities. People come, and you can point to national surveys. People attend a university to get a degree or a credential because they know that degree or credential will launch them in their life, right? It is something that they see as an essential to their mobility and success, right? And as a consequence, the choice available through academic program is really important. I want to work in the allied health professions. I don't know which one. I want to be a teacher, but I'm not sure what flavor, right? So students are inspired by choice, right? At the same time that they're going to be concerned, about other impacts. And we need to continue to address those issues and to work with our students to design. I'm very proud of the fact that both of these plans have been developed in a way which, with deep engagement with students, obviously at the board level, thank you very much, but also through advisory structures that the presidents in the region have constructed for themselves so that they can work directly with students to hear and address their concerns. But presidents, don't hesitate to chime in here.
Go ahead, Dale.
Okay, so
when I find my voice.
Okay, thank you. Nicole, those are great questions. Yes, we have taken into consideration the impact. As a matter of fact, even the non-integrating schools are very concerned about the impact of integration. I met with the presidents from Slippery Rock, Cal, and also from IUP, just about the regional impact of people taking pot shots and trying to gouge our enrollment and usurp some of our students by spreading anxiety and fear and uncertainty. So that is something that we're working to address. Our strategic comprehensive enrollment management plan and our marketing plan is being developed with that in mind. We are hoping that once the uncertainty is lifted and we come out with more concrete plans in the summer, that we'll be able to address some of those particular things to our future students and our current students. And we've also, on a weekly basis, we're doing updates to our students, sending out information. We did a survey and the students wanted it, surprise, by email. And so we're sending out email updates regularly in addition to other kinds of open forums and so forth. I think that from the student's perspective, if you look at it from the external, we're hoping that from our marketing plan, if you want to apply at Cal, you want to apply at Clarion, you want to apply to Edinburgh, or you want to apply to the online virtual campus, from an external perspective, we'll be able to message that in a way that's less confusing for students. From an internal perspective, we're really looking to leverage our connections on campus so that students will not opt out and drop out when they hit a block in one program. We'll be able to capture them in the safety net and go forward. So there's going to be a few bumps along the way, especially with grief, loss, and uncertainty with this whole process. But we have a positive momentum, and we're going to keep that positive momentum going forward. So thanks, Nicole. Those are great questions.
Nicole, the only thing I would add is just like the West, the Northeast had a student advisory board that we met with regularly. And as the chancellor said, many of the concerns were focused around student government associations, clubs and organizations, student activity fees. And we've made the decision in the Northeast that the three institutions will maintain their distinct student government organizations, their clubs, and their fees will be campus-based. The other part that I think is really important to point out here, and it hasn't been mentioned yet today, is that in the Northeast, 75% of our current enrollment falls into 8 major disciplinary areas. And it's critical to say this. Those 8 disciplinary areas are not going anywhere. They will be available in person on all 3 campuses. Where the benefit of integration surfaces for the student is that for smaller programs that we just are not able, excuse me, are not able to sustain at multiple campuses, students in the region will still be able to take their first 2 years of coursework at any of the 3 campuses, and then selective upper term electives will be offered via technology. That's an opportunity right now that if after right sizing and after balancing our budgets, both Lock Haven and Mansfield, and I'll be very candid, are not going to be able to offer those opportunities to students. So there really is a lot to benefit. Look, as you said, change brings anxiety. There's always unknowns that we'll discover tomorrow, as Governor Mazur said, and next week and the week after, and we'll have to address them. But I think ultimately, all of the work we've done is based around students and their success.
You know, building on what President Hanna just said, we also are very committed to making sure that we stay regional comprehensive universities, that we offer a full opportunity for the full spectrum of opportunities for students, but we need to do it smart in a way that we're able to continue those. So programs that would have gone away or been cut under the traditional recession management plan we've been doing since 2007 will not be cut. And that's very important going forward. The plan is to stabilize and rebuild.
Thank you. We've got about 10 minutes left in our discussion period. So we'll go to Representative Briggs and then Alex. Representative Briggs.
Thank you, Randy, and thank you, Chancellor. I do want to make what largely will be a statement on where I think we are on this. I first want to thank you, your team, and the hundreds of people who invested themselves so heavily into creating this proposed implementation plan. As the representative from the House Democratic Caucus, I want to make clear that I have long been an ardent supporter of PASHE and have consistently advocated for increased funding for state system since the very first day I took office over a decade ago. However, those funding investments haven't been made and are in part the reason the system is in the situation it's facing today. In recognition of these challenges, I joined with the House Democratic Caucus in supporting the reform initiative, which became Act 50, and I've long said change is needed and that change is hard. Act 50 provides the roadmap for our next steps to best realign our system. This is a major undertaking, and I do believe this is one of the initiatives we will need to make to make our system sustainable. Not the only approach, and it alone will not be enough, but it is an essential one. I do have a question or two, but mostly comments regarding what is in the implementation plan, as that is what we are voting on today, which is to accept the proposed implementation plan in order to kick off the 60-day public comment period. Everything we do here should keep in mind what's best for the students to have available a quality, affordable path to higher education. I was glad to see in the proposal that student participation was deemed critical. The report states that a limited number of campus student leaders were very involved, and I want to thank them for their engagement. But as President Pearson just mentioned, there was a survey to students. I'm curious if that was a system-wide survey, and also if in the final report, those results could be shared or even shared with the board. Also, I think we can all agree that predictably, our students is a priority. I have expressed a concern before and was hoping that the virtual or hybrid options would be fleshed out a little bit more in this proposal. After reading this, it is still not clear to me what an incoming student at one of our integrated student schools would expect in regards to needing to take online classes or obtain a degree. It looks like all gen ed requirements would be available in person. And then it looks like a little less clear that a number of online classes would be required to obtain their degree in a specific major. I understand that this will be worked on, but I'm concerned with the uncertainty it could do for recruiting potential students, especially at a school where most of their required coursework would be provided at one of the other institutions. As I said earlier, Act 50 created the roadmap and was very deliberate in requiring the implementation plan to include very specific items. Unfortunately, some I do not believe are in this proposal. One being a report regarding the financial impact of communities. This proposal does state that since the existing campuses will remain open and that the sporting programs will be continued, which we still don't quite have an answer on yet, that they don't anticipate any impacts. But I was really hoping for a more in-depth financial impact report. I was envisioning this impact report would go beyond just the campus, but how it would affect the entire community. I hope that it could be worked on during these next 60 days. Also, another requirement that was included in Act 50 was what I think was called the before and after organizational structure and chart. In the proposal, it provides what I think it referred to as a high-level organizational chart. But it also says in the report that the faculty, leadership, and other reports will be provided by June 2022. Act 50 requires that these reports be included in this proposal. A lot of talk has already been done about middle states and NCAA, and I would prefer a little bit more direction or guidance from them within their preliminary reports, what they would mean for non-accredited institutions. Because as my colleague Representative Roy said, the board or chancellor cannot close a college. But I think where the concern is that these non-accredited institutions would be considered a branch campus. I know that that is no one's intent, but I do think in the final report, it should be explicitly clear so that future boards and leadership understand that. As I start, I want to thank everyone for their commitment in presenting a very solid proposal. It is remarkable we have come so far, but at this time, I don't see a need to accept this plan today. I think we should wait for some answers, continue to work on the requirements under Act 50, and approve this at a later meeting. But today, I just don't see the rush. I do anticipate that this proposed plan will be accepted by the Board of Governors and start the 60-day clock of public comment. During that time, there will be legislative hearings, public hearings, continued work with our stakeholders, faculty, workers, and especially our students. I'm encouraged that we will take these 60 days very seriously and listen to everyone's concerns. I hope in 60 days when we reconvene, there will be a final plan that I can support, but today I will be voting no. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. And next we have Alex and then Allison.
I had a question about the allocation formula. I know during my time on the board, I believe it's always been frozen. Ignore the sirens in the back. But when will that be reconsidered? And how will potential integrations play a role in that new allocation formula?
So we have postponed consideration of the allocation. We, the presidents and me in our executive leadership group, have postponed consideration of the allocation formula until we know the disposition of the plans by the board. Not wanting to do work twice. I've done allocation formulas. They're hard. We reckon it's about 18 months work. It's based on last time we did it. My conversation with colleagues, there are still a number of president's colleagues who are here who were at the last time. So we would anticipate beginning that process after, depending on the board's actions in July. At least then we know what the structure we're dealing with.
Thank you, Alex. And looks like our last hand up is Allison. Allison.
Thanks, Randy. So I know that this action today kicks off the 60-day public comment period. And actually, Senator Schwank asked my first question about whether we might be able to, make changes or adjust depending on the information that we learn over the next couple months. But I wondered if you might be able to speak to and elaborate a little bit more about what we can expect during this public engagement process. I know that Act 50 requires 2 formal public hearings for each of these kind of distinct integration plans, but obviously it's important that the process is inclusive and accessible. And, members of the board have talked about the pretty significant impact that it'll have on the 6 communities that host these universities and all of their stakeholders. So will there be other kind of mechanisms or opportunities for folks to provide feedback beyond these kind of more formal hearing settings?
Sure. Let me start, and then I can turn to others if I get it, if they want to elaborate. In thinking of Randy, even so, as of today or tomorrow, there will be a website where the plans are posted and feedback can be collected. That's probably the best way to get, hearings are important too, but really the best way to get information to us is to put it there, because it gives us the opportunity to then take it, collate it, categorize it. We could do the same with the feedback from the hearings. It's just, interact on the website that will become available. Obviously interact through the hearings which have been scheduled. I know that universities, many of the 6 universities are also hosting really informational events. They're not, I guess, formally part of the feedback process, but there's that it is also important that people are learning and listening, and we're hearing through that process as well. So, any number of opportunities over the 60-day period to engage and encourage folks to do that. Randy, did you want to add anything?
You're correct. And as to just amplify, the website will be available this afternoon, and it'll have instructions on how to respond online in an online web form, how to provide an email response, where to send a mail-in response if you want, and also dates regarding the hearings.
Great, thank you.
Great. And then Bill Gindelsberger, I think you had a question. You might be on mute, Bill.
There we are.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to make a couple comments if I could. I'm likely the newest member of the PASHE board, and I don't have the years of experience and the years of dealing with this issue that other members have. I'm sure for most of you, this has been a very frustrating matter. We have a responsibility to the Commonwealth and to the students and to communities, and to our staff. We have responsibility to all of these folks. But there's a problem, and the problem is difficult. And the problem is we don't have any money. We are at decreasing amounts of students. And yet we still have this obligation. And so in my years in business, I've done a number of things, one of which is to consult for organizations that are having difficulty. Generally, when an organization is having difficulty, it's because it needs to cut its costs and to increase its revenues. And that sounds a lot like us. So when we cut to the chase, that's what we really need to do. The problem is that when you do either of these, let alone both of them, that is, when you cut costs and you raise revenue, then you have to make a change. And change is difficult. And in many organizations, particularly those that fail, they never come to the point of making a decision about those two things. It drives a lot of questions, just like we all have questions today about moving forward. You know, change brings fear. It also launches possibilities. And of course, none of us are clairvoyant, none of us can see the future, and none of us know what the real response is going to be to anything that we do. And so what we do is we study and study and study, which we've done, and we come up with a program which we believe could well be an answer to at least some of our problems. But none of us really want to jump on that program and move forward because, you know, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I would tell you that in my experience, we really do need to do something. We can't continue to study this to death. We will never get to the point of helping our students, of helping our communities, of helping our employees, of doing what's right for the education in Pennsylvania. So as a business person, I would just tell you, we cannot survive unless we make a change. And we've trusted Dan and his team. I mean, we are a board of advisors essentially at PASHE. And we have entrusted our team led by Dan and his people to come forward with a plan, which they have, and it's studied. Now, granted, if we move forward with that plan today, with this next step, we do need to have, as some of you pointed out, information coming back to us so that we can readjust. And I understand that adjustment is in the program. But my point to you is that we have to make a decision. We have to move forward. We can't continue to postpone. As much as that might sharpen the point of the pencil a little bit more, we really do need to take action because we're being killed by high costs and lower revenues. Thank you.
Madam Chair, back to you.
Sorry, now I'm the one who can't find the mute button. Thank you very much. It's 10:29. We've had a robust discussion. In a minute, I'm going to put this on the floor as a motion for a roll call vote. My very quick closing comments would be that I think Bill hit the nail on the head. I think that it is critically important that we move this forward to the stage of public comment, and that is what this is about today. This is not approving plans as is. This is saying we are at a point where we can continue to move forward, not go back to the drawing board unless somehow out of public comment, that appears to be, you know, the best solution. But unless we have a vote to move this forward today to that point of public hearing and public comment, we will not even have a chance to vet these plans. And that's really what this is about today and what we're talking to the board about doing today. So I had other comments to make. It's 10:30 and I'm not going to. I'm just going to remind everybody that, again, we're not the only ones who are going through this or have gone through this. Think about the women's colleges. There were 280 plus women's colleges in the United States, 30 years ago. And you know what? There are 34 that remain now because everyone basically had to change in order to further its mission, like we have to further our mission. They merged, they found coordinate colleges, they fundamentally changed their business models. They did something in order to keep their mission alive. And that's what we're talking about here today. So I just want to bring, and it was very painful, those decisions. And, alumni had fits about it. And, you heard all all of the arguments, all of which are legitimate. But when you're faced in a position where the business model is fundamentally not working, there's a structural problem that's deep and complex, you have to address it. And that is what we're asking to do today. Further this to the point where we can vet these plans and discuss this and get this thing moving. So with that, I'm going to put a motion on the floor for a roll call vote. I move that the Board of Governors approve the proposed West and Northeast integration implementation plans, which will initiate a 60-day public review and comment period prior to final consideration by the board. Is there a second?
I second that.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, Charissa, would you please do a roll call vote?
I sure can. Representative Briggs,
No.
Governor Dunlop,
No.
Governor Feefold,
Aye.
Governor Gindelsberger,
Aye.
Governor Hauser,
Yes.
Senator Martin,
Aye.
Governor Mazer,
Yes.
Governor Moskowitz,
Yes.
Governor Mueller,
Yes.
Designee Tanya Garcia,
Yes.
Representative Roy,
Yes.
Senator Schwank,
Aye.
Chair Shapiro,
Aye.
Governor Smith,
Yes.
Governor Skinner,
Yes.
Secretary Jones,
Yes.
Governor Washington,
Aye.
Governor Weaver,
Yes.
Governor Yeomans,
Yes.
and Dr. Phillips. Sorry. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Okay. That is our vote. I think considering the time, there are two important things we're not going to do today and going to do in July because we've come to the end of time for a quorum. And that is resolutions honoring our fabulous student trustees, Nicole Dunlop and Alex Feefold. So please come back so that we can do that in July. Thank you. We also were going to have an executive session. We can postpone that for now. And we'll be, getting back to you on rescheduling that. So with that, if there is no other business to come before the board, we are in adjournment.